The light in Aurelian was dying. It was not the gentle fade of a natural dusk, but a slow, arterial bleed. High above the crystal spires of the capital, the sun scar wept. It was a ragged, weeping wound of crimson light, stretching across the heavens. And with every cycle, it grew. It was, the astromancers whispered, the visible manifestation of the Zarin Empire's decline. A decline that had begun 100 years ago, in the post-exile era. Now, that decline has reached its terminal phase. In the Hall of Reflecting Dawn, the emptiness was a physical presence. It was a cold, heavy thing that sat in the 1,500 chairs that rested its phantom elbows on the tables draped in immaculate Zarin cobalt. 10,000 crystal goblets waited for hands that would not come. 10,000 silver plates reflected the sickening, reddish glow of the sky. At the far end, upon the shard throne, sat Empress Athera Zarin. Her coronation gala was a masterpiece of failure. Invitations, carried by lightspeed couriers, had been sent to every known planet in the Therian galaxy. None had been answered. Athera kept her spine straight. Her hands, pale and still, rested on the armrests of jagged crystal. The halo of shards, her crown, felt less like a symbol of power and more like a cage for her skull. She was 25, Empress of Echoes, Queen of the Vacuum. The Imperial Orchestra, bound by a contract centuries old, played on. They played a glorious, soaring symphony composed for a court that no longer existed. The music was beautiful, complex, and utterly hollow. It was a symphony for ghosts, the mirrored walls, designed to capture and amplify the light of 1,000 guests, showed her only herself. Repeated into infinity, a lonely girl in a heavy crown, presiding over a banquet of air. The only sound, apart from the music, was the deliberate, measured tread of footsteps approaching the throne, Regent Maldric Thane. He was a man carved from old, polished wood, immaculate in his ceremonial robes. His face was a mask of patrician concern, but his eyes held the flat, cold gleam of commerce. He stopped a precise 10 paces from the dais, bowing with perfect, insulting grace. Your Radiance, his voice was smooth, cultured, and carried easily over the music. This is most unfortunate. A display of profound disrespect from our supposed allies. Athera said nothing. She had no words for this. Perhaps, he continued, glancing at the endless rows of empty chairs. A dignified postponement is in order. To cancel the remainder of the festivities would be to save face. There is no honor in presiding over an absence. Her gaze, cool and steady, met his face. The word was small, petty. The Zarin Empire had never cared for its face. It had been built on honor, a different, heavier currency. "The gala will proceed as scheduled, Lord Regent," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it cut through the hall. The orchestra did not falter. Maldric Thane allowed a flicker of irritation to cross his features. "Your Radiance, I must advise you. No one came." "And yet we are here," Athera replied, her gaze unwavering. "The music is playing. The throne is occupied. The throne does not hide, Lord Regent. Not from disrespect. Not ever." A thin, reptilian smile touched the regent's lips. He understood. This was not about politics for her. It was about pride. A weakness he could and would exploit. He bowed again, lower this time. "As you command, my Empress." He turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing until they were swallowed by the music. Athera watched him go. She knew exactly what he was. He was the voice of the Pact of Glass, the cabal of arms-dealing noble houses that had grown fat as the Empire starved. They had no interest in her throne. A throne was a liability. They wanted the Empire's assets, its shipping lanes, its mining rights, its forgotten technologies. And, the whispers said, they were the ones feeding the Sunscar, manipulating the delicate balance of the system's star, accelerating its decay, bleeding the Empire dry so they could purchase its corpse for scrap. Maldrick was their auctioneer, and this Gala, this galactic shunning, was his first bid. The music swelled, a triumphant cascade of notes that felt like a mockery. The mirrors showed her only herself, alone. 1,000 times over. It was too much. She rose, the halo of shards heavy on her brow. I require air, she said to the empty hall. No one answered. She moved from the cavernous, empty hall to a high, private balcony. The cool night air was a relief, though it was stained with the same red light. Below, the capital city of Aurelian was silent. There were no celebrations in the streets, no fireworks, just the oppressive, fearful quiet of a city waiting for the sky to fall. She thought she was alone. He's not wrong, you know. The voice startled her. It was male, low, with an unfamiliar accent. She spun, in the deepest shadows of the balcony, half hidden by a marble column. A man was sitting on a stone bench. He was human. She blinked, her mind racing. The human delegation was minor, a new signatory with little to offer, but depleted resources and a history of self-destruction. They had been given quarters in the lower city, far from the palace. He wore a military uniform, but it was ill-fitting. The jacket was strained across his shoulders, the trousers a fraction too short. It looked borrowed. He made no move to stand, no gesture of deference. He just sat, watching her. You are out of bounds, human, Aethera said. Her voice was sharp, regaining its imperial edge. I am, he agreed easily. He gestured to a small, prism-shaped box sitting on the balustrade near him. It caught the crimson light of the Sunscar and fractured it into a spray of confused, beautiful colors. I was told to deliver this. The front door seemed uncrowded. My apologies. Your radiance. The dry wit was so unexpected, so jarringly out of place that she was silent. He finally stood, moving out of the shadow. He was taller than she had expected, with a face that was all hard plains and stillness. His eyes were dark and watchful. Adrian Cole, he said, acting logistics advisor for the Earth delegation, a small token from one group of survivors to another. The word survivors struck her. He saw the truth beneath the crystal, the crown and the Gala farce. He saw the end. She approached the railing, not him. Music from the hall drifted, faint and ghostly. Adrian Cole stood beside her, a respectful 3 feet away. They looked at the silent city. At least, he murmured, his voice barely audible. The music doesn't require dancing. Aethera froze. The absurdity of the moment, the burning sky, the empty party, the end of her civilization, and this strange, plain-spoken man making a joke about a waltz broke something in her. A tiny, involuntary tremor shook her. Her lips, pressed tight in a line of imperial control, twitched. It was not a smile. It was the first crack of ice. Your title is logistics, she said, her voice tight. A clerk. Yes, your radiance. You do not carry yourself like a clerk. She studied him now, truly looked at him. His title was a lie. His borrowed uniform was a lie. The way he stood was true. He was not slouched from ledgers or fidgety from diplomacy. He was rooted to the stone, perfectly balanced. His hands were classive, resting at his sides, not clasped in deference. His gaze was not on her. It was on the plaza below, the rooftops opposite, the sky above. He was scanning, assessing. This was the discipline of a warrior. "I carry what is required," he said simply. Before she could question him further, the music inside reached its grand crescendo. It was the anthem of the first light, a piece not played in over 500 years, timed to coincide with the ceremonial lighting of the great crystal orb. Inside the hall, the massive chandelier, a wonder of the old empire carved from a single, moon-sized kyber crystal, began to glow. It pulsed with the music, a warm, golden light. Adrian tensed. He saw it before she did. His head snapped toward the arched doorway of the hall. His entire body became rigid. "Wrong," he whispered. "What?" Athera asked, annoyed by the interruption. "The resonance," he said, his voice dropping to a harsh command. "It's off. Get down." The golden glow of the orb turned a fraction of a second later to a blinding, sickening white. A high-frequency whine pierced the night, shattering the symphony, a sound that drilled into the bone. Athera had 1 second. 1 second to see the man named Adrian Cole cease to be a clerk and become something else entirely. He did not push her. He did not dive. He exploded. He crossed the 10 feet between them in a single, fluid motion that seemed to impossibly compress time. It was an act of precise, violent physics. His left arm snaked around her waist, lifting her from her feet. His right hand clamped over the back of her head, forcing it down. He didn't just cover her. He used his own body as a fulcrum, twisting them in midair, putting his own back, clad in that borrowed uniform, toward the doorway. The world dissolved in white light and thunder. The explosion was a physical blow, a concussion wave that rattled the teeth and stole the air from her lungs. It was followed by the sound of a mountain of crystal shattering into 1,000,000,000,000 pieces. Heat and force washed over them. Shrapnel, razor-sharp shards of the orb, screamed past, embedding themselves deep in the stone wall where she had been standing an instant before. The sound was like 1,000,000,000 angry wasps. They hit the balcony floor hard. She was underneath him, his weight a solid, unmoving shield. He smelled of ozone and the clean, sterile scent of recycled uniform fabric. Then, silence. A profound, ringing void where the music had been. The only sound was the soft, musical tinkle of crystal dust settling on the marble, and the distant groan of the palace's structure. He did not move. For 1, 2, 3 full seconds. He remained absolutely still, his head lifted, listening. Her ears rang. She was the Empress of the Zarin, and she was pinned to the floor, gasping for air. He was a human clerk, and he was breathing slowly, evenly against her back. Her hand, trapped between his chest and the stone, felt the iron-hard tension of his abdomen. This was not the body of a logistics advisor. "Get off me!" she finally managed, her voice a ragged gasp. She pushed at his shoulder. It was like pushing against a bulkhead. He moved instantly, rolling off her, and onto his feet in a single, practiced motion. The fluidity of it was unnerving. He offered her his hand. She ignored it. She climbed to her feet, her entire body shaking, not from fear, but from a cold, precise rage. She looked into her grand hall. It was a hurricane of glittering dust. The great orb was gone. In its place was a blackened, smoking crater in the high ceiling. The 1,500 empty chairs were riddled with crystal spears, many of them driven clean through the tables. It was a tomb, built for an audience that had wisely stayed away. A sophisticated assassination, timed to the anthem, designed to kill her, and anyone who had dared to attend. She turned back to the man. He was not looking at her. He was at the balustrade, leaning out, scanning the rooftops. His eyes narrowed against the red light. "Who are you?" she demanded. Her voice was low, shaking, and lethal. Adrian Cole turned from the darkness to face his Empress. His borrowed uniform was dusted with pulverized crystal. He did not bow. He did not apologize. He simply met her gaze. Someone who listens. The silence that followed the explosion was heavier than the crystal itself. It was a ringing, deafening vacuum. Then, the screams began. Distant, thin cries from the palace staff, followed by the clatter of armored boots as the royal sentinels, stationed uselessly at the main gates half a kilometer away, finally realized something was wrong. Aethera was still on the ground, the dust of the explosion settling on her like a shroud. Her ears rang. Her rage was a cold, pure thing. "You are unharmed. Your radiance," Adrian Cole stated. It was not a question. He was already moving, his eyes scanning the shattered doorway. "No, thanks to my guard," she said, pushing herself to her feet, ignoring the hand he offered for the second time. She would not be helped. Not tonight. Not by a stranger. The balcony doors opened, not sentinels. It was Regent Maldrick Thane, flanked by two of his own private security men, clad in the matte black armor of the Pact of Glass. Their presence in the royal wing was a violation of protocol so profound it was tantamount to treason. Thane's mask of concern was perfect. "Your radiance." "An outrage. The city is in chaos. The palace is breached. You must be moved to the Citadel vault. For your safety." He was trying to secure her, to lock her away. "I am quite safe, Lord Regent," Aethera said, her voice dangerously quiet. She brushed crystal dust from her imperial sash. "But my gala, it seems, has been interrupted." "This is no time for semantics," Thane snapped, taking a step toward her. Adrian immediately, silently, shifted his position, placing himself between the Regent and the Empress. Thane's eyes narrowed, finally noticing the human. "Who is this? A guest?" Aethera said. "Unlike your soldiers, he was present." The insult landed. Thane's face tightened. "Your radiance as regent. I am invoking the emergency protocol. You will be escorted. You will do nothing, Lord Regent." Aethera cut him off. Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. It was the voice of 10,000 years of Zarin rule. "This was not a breach. This was an inside action. The emergency protocol is void. I am invoking the Imperial Edict of Investigation, effective immediately." Thane looked stunned. "That is archaic. You require the full council." "I require loyalty. I will find it. Send for the captain of the Sentinels. I want this hall sealed. I want every frame of security data. I want the full ordnance report. Now." Thane hesitated, his authority evaporating. He was a creature of backrooms and contracts. This open, royal command in a hall, still smoking from an attack, left him momentarily adrift. He bowed, his anger palpable. "As you command." He turned and swept out, his black-clad guards following like shadows. The moment he was gone, Aethera turned to Adrian. "You, someone who listens. Listen to this." She walked past him, into the devastation of the Grand Hall. The air was thick with glittering dust. The 1,000 empty chairs were impaled with crystal spears. "This was meant to kill me," she said, running a finger along a shard half an inch thick, embedded in the back of the shard throne. "And anyone foolish enough to sit near me—" "It was," Adrian agreed. He was not looking at the throne. He was kneeling at the threshold, examining the blackened, melted stone of the doorway where the orb had been mounted. But the execution was flawed. Flawed, it destroyed the Hall of Dawn. It did. He scraped a pinch of black residue from the stone, rubbing it between his thumb and forefinger. He sniffed it. But the charge was directional. The explosive was placed behind the orb mount. See the charring. It was designed to use the orb itself as the projectile. A fragmentation charge. They wanted this spray. They wanted this. He gestured to the thousands of crystal daggers littering the room. But the trigger, he continued, rising, was acoustic. The music, Aethera breathed. The anthem of the first light. A specific, complex frequency, impossible to replicate by chance. Which means, as you said, an inside job. Someone with access to the ceremonial protocols and the orchestral program. He walked to the center of the room, looking up at the smoking hole in the ceiling. But that's not the important part. He held up his fingers, still coated in the black, greasy soot. This residue, the energy signature, it's a star crystal device. Refined, military grade. A cold certainty settled in Aethera's stomach. Only one consortium in the Therian galaxy refines star crystals to this purity. The Pact of Glass, Adrian finished for her. They stood in the center of the ruined hall, the crimson light of the sunscar painting them in the color of blood. The illusion of her empire was gone, shattered into a million pieces. All that remained was the hard, cold truth. You cannot stay here, Adrian said. Thane will be back, and he won't ask next time. I will not run. I did not say run, Adrian said. I said you cannot stay here. He controls the palace. He controls the sentinels. We need to move outside his control. And where? She asked with biting sarcasm. Does an empress go when her own palace is a cage? You find the person who holds the other keys. The office of the imperial seal was no great chamber. It was a deep, circular room in the oldest part of the palace, a place of stone and shadow, untouched by the crystal and light aesthetic of the later eras. The air smelled old parchment and ozone. When they entered, a young woman was standing at a data loom, her back to them. She did not turn. I hope you enjoyed the fireworks, your radiance, the woman said, her fingers still flying across a console of light. The preliminary reports suggest a 99% structural failure in the Dawn Hall. The insurance claims will be monumental. Kaya Rel, Aethera said. My royal cryptographer and keeper of secrets. Or more accurately, the only person in this palace who still does her job. Kaya finally turned. She was thin, sharp, and wore a practical technician's jumpsuit, a stark contrast to Aethera's heavy coronation robes. Her eyes were the color of a winter sky, and they took in the scene with unconcealed cynicism, the Empress, covered in dust, and the tall, grim-faced human in the ill-fitting suit. And who? Kaya asked. Is the borrowed suit? This is Adrian Cole, acting logistics advisor for the human delegation, Aethera said. Ah, logistics. Is that what we're calling bodyguards who arrive after the explosion? He arrived before, Aethera said. Which is why I am still breathing. We need a path. Kaya, now, to the inner market. Kaya's fingers stopped moving. She turned fully, blinking. I beg your pardon, the inner market is in the cesspit of Aurelian. The place where you can buy a new face, a politician's conscience, or 3 different ways to die before sunrise. The Pact used a star crystal device, Adrian said, stepping forward. His voice was flat. We need to find the broker who sourced it. Kaya looked him up and down. Her gaze lingered on his boots. Standard issue Second Fleet boots. 2 sizes too large. You walk like you own the hall. For a man in borrowed shoes, Adrian met her gaze without flinching. Better than wearing a crown to a party no one attended. Kaya's mouth snapped shut. Her eyes widened. Just a fraction. She looked at Aethera, expecting an imperial reprimand, a flash of anger. Instead, she saw the emptiest, most microscopic of Empress's lips. It was gone in an instant, but it had been there. A flicker of appreciation. The dynamic in the room shifted. Kaya Rel let out a slow breath. "Gods," Kaya muttered. "You're both insane. You do realize that on the night the palace explodes, the silence tax in the market will be astronomical. And you," she pointed at Aethera, "cannot go dressed like that. You'll be a beacon." "I am aware," Aethera said, already unfastening the heavy imperial cloak. "Find me something appropriate." "Fine," Kaya sighed, turning to a pressurized locker. "But if we get shanked for that crown which you are not wearing, I am lodging a formal complaint with whatever afterlife I end up in." "And he," she jerked a thumb at Adrian, "is paying the tolls. From his vast logistics budget, I assume." "I'll manage," Adrian said. The exit was not a door. It was a resonance tunnel, a relic of the First Empire, designed to transmit messages via vibration through the planet's core. Now, it was just a dark, musty tube that smelled of copper and decay. When they emerged, it was another world. If the palace was a symphony of light and air, the inner market was a cacophony of steam and shadow. It was a vast subterranean cavern beneath Aurelian, lit by the chaotic glow of holographic advertisements and the purple, filtered bleed-through of the sun scar. The air was thick with the smell of alien spices, hot metal, and unwashed bodies. Aethera, now clad in a simple gray hooded cloak, kept her head down, her hands hidden. This was her city, her capital, and yet she had never seen this place. It was a thriving, rotting ecosystem of the disenfranchised. "Welcome to the free market," Kaya whispered, guiding them through the throng. "This is what the Pact of Glass champions. Total, unregulated commerce." Aethera saw it. A stall, selling bottled memories, a child's first laugh. A lover's last words, right next to a stall selling neural toxins. A Zeltronite broker was auctioning off a family's noble title. An arms dealer with 4 arms displayed weapons that pulsed with dark energy. "This is illegal," Aethera whispered, appalled. "This is survival, your radiance," Kaya corrected, her voice hard. "The Pact chokes the upper city with regulations and tariffs, forcing all real trade down here, where they can take a cut without any of the paperwork. They own this place." Adrian said nothing. His head was on a constant, slow swivel. He was not a tourist, and he was an invasion force. His eyes catalogued every exit, every potential threat, every face that lingered on them for a second too long. They were being watched, not with open aggression, but with the casual, calculating gaze of predators. This was the silence tax Kaya had spoken of. The unwritten law of the market you paid for the privilege of not being noticed. And you paid more, not to be remembered. Kaya led them down a narrow alley, past a forge-breathing blue fire, and stopped at a reinforced steel door. She rapped a complex, 5-beat rhythm. A slot slid open, and a red, multifaceted eye peered out. "Kaya Rel, you're slumming it tonight," a digitized voice rasped. "Business. Dax," Kaya said, slipping a data chip into the slot. "We need a word. Official." "Official," the voice was amused. "I don't do official. I do profitable." "This will be," Kaya promised. The door hissed open, revealing a small, dark room filled with flickering holographic displays. Sitting behind a desk made from a salvaged engine block was a being that was barely recognizable as Zarin. He was half machine, but not in the elegant, integrated way of Imperial cybernetics. This was a scrap. A rusty, pincer-like claw served as his left hand. One eye was a whirring, clicking optical sensor. His voice came from a grill bolted to his throat. This was Dax Harker, the market's foremost information broker. "So," Dax rasped, his good eye landing on Aethera's cloaked form. "The palace sends its shadows," and his sensor word focusing on Adrian. "A human. How quaint. We don't get many of your kind down here. Not since—" He trailed off. Adrian had not moved. He stood in the doorway, a solid block of shadow. The air in the tiny room crackled, becoming cold and dangerously thin. Aethera felt it first. A stillness from Adrian that was so profound it was more violent than a shout. "Helion fire gap," Adrian said. The name dropped into the room like a grenade. Dax Harker's entire body became rigid. The whirring of his optical sensor became a frantic, high-pitched clicking. He stared at Adrian, truly seeing him for the first time. The broker's smug, greasy confidence evaporated, replaced by a raw, digital terror. "No," Dax whispered, his voice rasping. "No, you are dead. The whole platoon. The Ashen Warden's Cole. Sergeant Cole. You all burned." "You were well paid for the information." "Dax." Adrian's voice was soft, devoid of all emotion. It was terrifying. "The coordinates of our medical transport. The shield cycle frequencies. A good bounty." Aethera looked at Adrian. She remembered the fire in his eyes as he'd scanned the rooftops. She saw it now, but it was different. It was not the heat of a tactical assessment. It was the white-hot core of a star collapsing. This was revenge, a hatred so old and so pure it had become a part of his bones. Dax's cybernetic hand twitched, moving toward a button under his desk. "Don't," Adrian advised. Dax froze. "We had a deal," Dax stammered. "The pact they said was just a pirate squadron. They said... They lied," Adrian said. "And you got rich. And my platoon died screaming." Adrian took one step into the room. His hand, the one that had been so steady on her back, was now clenched into a fist that looked capable of shattering stone. He had a mission. He had come to Aurelian for this man. The Empress, the Gala, the explosion. It was all an interruption of his own. Private war. Dax was babbling. "It wasn't me, it was the pack. They burned the field, they wait. You're here now. With her." The explosion. Aethera saw her opening. She saw the rage in Adrian, and she saw the terror in Dax. And she made her choice. She stepped directly between them. It was a move of suicidal, imperial folly. Her back was to Adrian's rage, her front to Dax's panic. "Sergeant Cole," she said, her voice like ice. "We are here for the Zarin Empire, not for Helion." Adrian stopped. He was so close, she could feel the heat radiating from him. He was breathing hard, fighting a battle she could not see. "He sold my people," Adrian said, his eyes fixed on Dax. "And he is about to sell his new masters," Aethera countered, not looking back at him. "Or he will die. But he will die for the Empire, not for your past." A long, agonizing silence. Dax was sweating, his one organic eye darting between the Empress and the ghost. Adrian's fist slowly, painfully, unclenched. The killing intent receded, banked like a furnace. He took one step back, ceding the floor to her. He had made his choice. "Dax Harker," Aethera said, her voice ringing with an authority that had nothing to do with her cloak. "You will tell me everything, or I will leave you alone with him, and I will not come back." Dax broke. The words spilled out of him. It's not just an assassination, it's a coup, a legal one, he rasped. The pact, Thane. They're invoking the throne-cutting ceremony. Kaya, who had been silent by the door, gasped. That's archaic. It's ritualized murder. It hasn't been used in a millennium. It's law, Dax squeaked, and the pact owns the law. The assassination was step one, proof of imperial incompetence. The Gala, the fact that no one came, is step two. Loss of galactic mandate. In 3 days, when the Sunscar reaches its apex, they will convene the ceremony. They will present their proof. They will challenge you. And since you have no allies, no fleet, and no support, they will win. Maldrick Thane will be Regent Protector for life. The Pact gets the Starloom. They get everything. The Starloom. The ancient, forbidden technology that legend claimed could control the Sunscar, or weaponize it. Athera, Kaya said, her voice thin. We have to run. We can take a ship. No. Athera's voice was final. She was no longer the lonely girl on the balcony. She was no longer the victim. She was an Empress. She turned her back to the sniveling broker and faced Adrian. Her gaze was as hard as his. They have used the old law, she said, her mind working with cold, swift precision. So shall we. The throne-cutting ceremony has a fail-safety, a counter-edict. So ancient they have forgotten it. The Edict of Sacrilege, Kaya breathed, her eyes wide with dawning, terrified hope. Yes, if the challenger in this case, Thane and the Pact, can be proven to be acting in high treason before the first bell of the ceremony, the law inverts, the throne itself locks, the accusers become the accused. They are convicted of blasphemy against the sun and the state. Their assets, their titles, their very lives are forfeit to the throne. She held Adrian's gaze. They have given me 3 days to prove they are traitors, 3 days to save my people, and I will need someone who listens. Adrian looked at her. He had come to Aurelian to find a traitor and execute him. He had found him, but he had also found something else, a leader with no army, a queen with no subjects, an honor that refused to break. His private war for Helion wavered. It was not gone, but it was eclipsed. By her, he nodded. We found the proof. They left Dax Harker weeping in his dark, holographic room. As they stepped back into the chaos of the inner market, Kaya let out a shaky laugh. Well, she said, pulling her hood tight, at least we have a plan. Insane, suicidal, impossible plan, but a plan. They walked in silence for a long moment. The three of them, a mismatched trio against an empire of corruption. The Empress, the spy, and the ghost. 3 days, Athera said, as the filtered, bloody light of the scar painted her face. Let's not waste them. The Archive of Reflections, Kaya said, her voice echoing in the stone resonance tunnel. They were moving back toward the palace, but through a different, older route. Dax's information is horrifying, but it's also useless without proof. The throne-cutting ceremony is binding. You can't just accuse the regent. We will not accuse, Athera said. She had pulled her hood low, but her voice was firm. We will present evidence. The star crystal device is the key. Where did it come from? Dax only knew the what, not the where, Kaya replied. He said the order was prime-sealed. That's why he couldn't see its origin. It's above his clearance. Prime-sealed, Athera mused. Then the order came from within the palace, from someone with access to the highest levels of security. Thane, Adrian said. It was a statement. Or someone he controls, Athera countered. The prime seal can be delegated. The keeper of the archive, the Lord Justiciar and the regent. So, we need to know who, Kaya said, frustration in her voice. We're running in circles. We have 3 days. 2 days and 10 hours, Adrian corrected her. His voice clipped. We lost time in the market. Kaya shot him a look. Thank you, logistics. That's incredibly helpful. The device was an acoustic trigger tied to the orchestral program. Adrian continued, ignoring her. The program is ceremonial. It would be logged. The ordnance itself, the star crystal, is unique. Its signature would be in the imperial manifests. We need the original order. We need the registry. We need the archive of reflections. Aethera finished. Kaya, can you get us in? Get you in? Kaya laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. Your radiance. I live there. It's my office. The question is, can we get in without Thane knowing he controls the Sentinels? And after the explosion, he'll have the archive locked down tighter than a politician's morals. He will expect me to go to the throne room. Or the vaults, Aethera said. He will not expect me to go to the library. We will go now. While he is still managing the crisis he created. The archive of reflections was nothing like the airy, crystal palace above. It was a place of gravity and shadow, a vast, subterranean repository of the Empire's entire history. Not data looms of light, but massive crystalline servers that hummed with a deep, resonating power. The air was cold, smelling static and dust. This is the heart of the Zarin, Aethera whispered, entering the main chamber. The ceiling was lost in darkness, and the walls were lined with towering crystal spires, each one a reflection, a complete record of a full century. And this, Kaya said, moving to a dusty, isolated console, is the annex, the parts of our history we'd rather forget. She activated the terminal. Okay, I'm searching for all manifestations related to star crystal ordnance in the last 6 months, and cross-referencing all logs for the Anthem of the First Light. The console hummed. Data, written in the complex, flowing script of the Zarin, scrolled past on a holographic display. Nothing, Kaya said after a long moment. It's all clean. No star crystal shipments. No unauthorized access to the Anthem. The logs are immaculate. He's thorough, Adrian murmured. He was not looking at the console. He was looking at the spires themselves. He's not just a politician. He's a counterintelligence operative. He knows how to clean a file. We're looking in the wrong place. What do you mean? Aethera asked. We're looking for his orders, Adrian said. We should be looking for ours. He turned to Kaya. This archive, it holds history. Diplomatic history. Everything, Kaya confirmed. Treaties, alliances, betrayals. It's all here. Search for Earth, Adrian said so specifically. Hylian system. Kaya's fingers flew. That's old. Very old. Pre-exile. Why, the Pact of Glass was at Hylian, Adrian said, his voice flat. They weren't just pirates. They were a corporate fleet, testing weapons. They're not new to this. Aethera watched him. She saw the familiar, cold stillness settle over him. The memory of Hylian was not a memory. It was a scar he lived with every second. I found it, Kaya said, her voice hushed. A mutual defense pact. A technology exchange. The first Zarin Empire and the human conglomerate. It's over 300 years old. What did we exchange? Aethera asked, stepping closer. We gave them agricultural tech, terraforming algorithms. Kaya read, her eyes wide. And they gave us solar shielding, a way to stabilize a star, to build a containment field. The three stood in silence. "The star loom," Aethera breathed. "It wasn't Zarin." "It was human," Adrian said. He looked at the console, a dark, complex understanding dawning on his face. "My people, my ancestors. They helped you build a shield for your son, generations ago." "But the files are," Kaya's fingers tapped. "They're corrupted, redacted. There's a name here. A human operative, an Ashen Warden. The rest of his file, it's just black. Erased." "Ashen Warden," Adrian repeated. The name was unfamiliar, yet it tugged at something deep within him, a memory that wasn't his. "This is what Thane wants," Aethera said, her mind racing. "This is why he's timing the coup to the Sunscar's apex. He doesn't just want the Empire. He wants the key. Human technology to control the Starloom." "But why?" Kaya asked. "To fix the scar." "To weaponize it," Adrian said, his voice grim. "If you can stabilize a star, you can destabilize it. Turn it into a bomb. He's not selling the Empire for scrap. He's selling the entire galaxy a gun, with every star as a potential bullet. And the Pact of Glass will be the only ones with the trigger." The sheer, monstrous scale of the plan settled over them, suffocating the cold air. This was not a coup. It was the beginning of a galactic dark age, brokered by Maldrick Thane. Before they could speak, a chime echoed from Kaya's console. "An alert," she whispered, her face pale. "Silent summons. The small council. Thane is convening an emergency session. Right now. In the upper chambers." "He knows," Aethera said. "No," Kaya said, her eyes wide. "He doesn't know we know. This is about the fleet. Look at the agenda. Prorated dispersal of the remaining Third Fleet assets for debt reconciliation." "He's not waiting for the ceremony," Aethera said, her rage returning, cold and sharp. "He's selling our last line of defense. Now he's selling it to the Pact." "You can't go," Adrian said. "It's a trap." "If I do not go, I abdicate," Aethera said, her voice like steel. "I will be declared unresponsive in a time of crisis. It's the same as being unworthy. He wins. I must go." "Then we go with you," Adrian stated. "No, you." She pointed to him. "Are a liability. You are an unknown element. And you," she pointed to Kaya, "are my eyes. He does not know your full capabilities." She looked at her cryptographer. "Kaya, I need you to find the real Ordnance Order, the one Thane's men placed for the Star Crystal. It won't be in the active logs. It will be in the deep archives, under a false name. Find it, and find the secret pact. The one Dax mentioned, one that makes Thane regent for life. It will be sealed, but it will be here. Find it." "And what will you be doing?" Kaya asked, her voice tight with fear. Aethera said, straightening her dusty cloak. "I'm going to remind my regent who sits on the throne." The small council chamber was a room of oppressive opulence. Dark, polished wood, a single massive table, and holographic portraits of Aethera's ancestors glowering from the walls. Maldrick Thane sat at the head of the table, not in the regent's chair, but in the Empress's own. The other 6 council members, old, frightened nobles who had long ago traded their spines for comfort, merely looked down. "Your Radiance," Thane said, not bothering to stand. His voice was smooth with false sympathy. "We are glad you are safe. A terrible, terrible tragedy." "It was an act of war, Lord Regent," Aethera said. She remained standing at the foot of the table, a lone, gray-cloaked figure. "And you are in my chair." A flicker of annoyance. "I am preserving order, your Radiance. In your distress, certain immediate actions are required. The Pact of Glass has extended a most generous offer in exchange for the hulls of the decommissioned Third Fleet. They will forgive the Empire's outstanding debts. It is a peace, negotiated. Peace, Aethera repeated. The word tasted like ash. You call selling our last warships, the very ships that protect us from the Pact's own pirate fleets. Peace. You call it debt reconciliation. I call it payment. Board members waved, looking at Thane. His mask was slipping. The treasury is empty, he snapped, his voice hardening. The Sunscar is panicking the markets. We have no choice. We have honor, Aethera shot back. We have our history. We do not sell our shields and call it savvy bookkeeping. I will not sign this order. With respect, Your Radiance, Thane said, his voice dropping to a silken threat. Your signature is not required. The emergency protocols, which you so rashly dismissed, are now in full effect by decree of this council. Your emotional state after the attack. He was painting her as unstable, hysterical, unfit. My state, she said, is one of absolute clarity. You are a traitor, Maldrick. You and this entire council of cowards. You are selling your people to the very monster that is killing our son. She had overplayed her hand. She had no proof, only Dax's word. Thane smiled. It was a cold, victorious expression. Then you are indeed unfit. You are relieved of your duties until the throne-cutting ceremony can be convened. We will pray for your recovery. Guards. The doors opened. Sentinels, loyal to Thane, entered the room. Aethera did not move. You have forgotten the law, Regent. The ceremony cannot be called while the throne is in mourning for a declared act of war. And I have just declared it. You have 3 days. Find my peace, or I will find your treason. She turned, her cloak swirling, and walked out of the chamber. The sentinels did not dare touch her. She had not won, but she had bought time. A few precious hours. She found Adrian on the high, windswept terrace where they had first met. He was standing at the balustrade, staring at the Sunscar. It was a deeper, angrier red now. The purple dusk was approaching. How did it go? He asked, not turning. He is in my chair. He is selling my fleet. And he has called me mad. So, a typical Tuesday, Adrian murmured. The dry humor was so unexpected, it startled a short, sharp breath from her. It was almost a laugh. Something like that. She stood beside him. Silence stretched, filled only by the wind. Hellion, she said quietly. You were the only survivor. He did not answer for long. His hands gripped the stone balustrade. There were 142 of us, he said finally, his voice rough. Engineers, medics, a logistics team. We were there to help reinforce a civilian colony's shields. Dax Harker was our local contact. He sold our shield frequencies to a pirate fleet. Only it wasn't pirates. It was the Pact. They weren't raiding. They were testing. He turned to look at her, and his eyes were hollow, filled with a fire she had only glimpsed before. They used a directed energy weapon. It bypassed the shields, turned the air in our transports to plasma. They didn't just kill us. They glassed the field, burned everything. I only survived because I was outside the perimeter, in a deep-core seismic scanner, trying to fix a faulty power relay. I listened for 3 days. I listened to my friends burn. His voice broke, just for a second. That's my motive, Daus. That's why I'm here. To find Dax. To find the Pact commander who gave the order. And to stop them. For good. Aethera felt a profound, aching cold that had nothing to do with the wind. His quiet, His stillness was the armor he had built around that single, burning point of agony. His revenge was not a fleeting passion. It was a religion. It was all he had left. "I am sorry, Adrian," she said. It was all she could offer. He nodded, turning back to the sky. "Me too." They stood in silence again. The moment was heavy, suffocating. Athera wanted to change the subject. She wanted him back from that edge. She wanted to give him something other than that memory. "On Zarin," she said, her voice soft. "When the silence becomes too heavy, we share a rhythm, a silent dance. It's a way of speaking without words." He looked at her, confused. "Show me," she said. She held up her hand, palm out. "The rhythm of your home, of earth." He stared at her hand. Then, slowly, he raised his own. He tapped his fingers against his thumb. A simple, steady beat. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. "Rain," he said. "On a metal roof, a place in the mountains." She watched his hand. 1, 2, 3. A simple, gentle rhythm. She found her own hand, mirroring it. 1, 2, 3. "Zarin," she said, "is different." She changed the rhythm, a slow, long sweep of her index finger, followed by 2 sharp taps. Swoosh, tap, tap. The solar winds singing against the high crystals. He watched her hand. He tried to copy it. His motion was clumsy, angular. Swoosh, tap, tap. She smiled. A real, small, genuine smile. No, like this. She reached out, her fingers just brushing his. Slow, the wind, then the ice, sharp. He tried again. Swoosh, tap, tap. It was better. "I will teach you the Zarin bow," she said, the quiet humor returning to her voice. "The proper one. It takes years to master. It is all about balance." He looked at their hands, almost touching, moving in the rhythm of her home. In exchange," he replied, his voice a low rumble. "I'll teach you the earth stand. It's just standing. We're very good at it." Her smile widened. It felt strange on her face, in the purple light of the dying sun, standing on a balcony of a crumbling palace, with a traitor in her throne room, and a genocidal plot unfolding. She felt, for 1 second, not alone. Kaya's voice, sharp and breathless from a hidden comlink in Athera's ear, broke the moment. "I found it. Oh, gods, I found it." Athera's smile vanished. She stepped back, her hand dropping. "Where?" "The deep archives. He hid it under agricultural subsidies. A requisition for high-yield nutrient crystals. It's a perfect match for the energy signature of the bomb. Signed, sealed, and..." Kaya's voice broke. "And the signature, it's not Thane's? Athera, it's the royal prime seal. Your prime seal. The one only you and the keeper of the seal can use." "The keeper," Athera whispered. "Lord Varys." "An old man. He served my father." "He's a traitor," Kaya said, her voice sick. "He's been working for Thane. And I found another pact, one that makes Thane regent for life. It's all here. It's legal. It's ironclad. Unless we can prove the signature on the bomb order was coerced or faked." "Varys wouldn't talk," Athera said. "He's old school. He would die before admitting treason." "Then we need the original data slate," Adrian said, his voice hard. The silent dance was over. He was a soldier again. "The physical device he used to order." "The one with his biometric imprint. A digital log is not enough. We need the weapon itself." "Where?" Athera demanded. "The order was filed 2 hours ago." Kaya's voice was shaking. "But the point of origin for the device wasn't the palace. It was the Pact's regional headquarters. The Hollow Crystal Forge." Athera looked at Adrian, He looked at her. The hollow crystal forge. The safest, fortified, private weapons factory in the Therian galaxy. A place no one had ever infiltrated. "It's a fortress," Athera said. "And it holds the key to your edict of sacrilege," Adrian replied. "The physical proof of treason. We have 2 days," Athera nodded. The time for hiding in archives was over. The time for confronting senile councils was past. "Kaya," she said, her voice flat and cold as the void. "Find us some new clothes. We are going to a forge." The hollow crystal forge was no place for fire and soot. It was a place of cold, sterile light and the sharp scent of ozone. It was a laboratory disguised as a factory, hidden deep in the foundations of Aurelian. A monument to the Pact of Glass's true religion perfected, profitable death. They moved through a maintenance conduit, a cramped metal tube barely wide enough for one person. Kaya Rel was in the lead, her thin body wriggling through the dark with practiced ease. Her earlier cynicism had been burned away, replaced by a tense, focused adrenaline. Athera was behind her. Her imperial robes exchanged for a dark, gray, form-fitting infiltration suit Kaya had requisitioned from the royal archives. It felt alien against her skin, light and thin, offering no comfort. Adrian Cole was last, the rear guard. He moved with a liquid, impossible silence, a shadow guarding their backs. "Pressure junction ahead," Kaya whispered, her voice tinny over the private comlink. "There will be 2 guards. Standard rotation. They change posts in exactly 45 seconds. "We don't have 45 seconds," Adrian's voice replied, flat and calm. "Keep moving." "They're armed," Kaya hissed. "This isn't the palace. This is pack security. They shoot on sight." "Keep moving," he repeated. Kaya reached the junction and flattened herself against the duct wall. Through the grate, Athera could see them 2 guards in the same matte black armor as Thane's personal detail, standing by a reinforced bulkhead. Before Kaya could protest, Adrian moved. He slipped past Athera in the narrow tube like smoke. He did not pause, did not hesitate. His hand reached the grate. There was a soft, metallic hiss, some tool she did not see, and the grate fell away. Adrian dropped from the ceiling. It was not a fight. It was a cessation. The first guard turned, his mouth opening to shout. Adrian's hand, moving faster than Athera's eye could follow, struck his throat. The sound was a wet, heavy click. The guard collapsed, unconscious before he hit the floor. The second guard raised his pulse rifle. He never had a chance to aim. Adrian was already there, his body a blur of precise, economical motion. He disarmed the man, spun him around, and applied pressure to a point on his neck. The second guard went limp, his rifle clattering on the metal floor. The entire exchange took less than 3 seconds. It was silent, brutal, and utterly final. Athera and Kaya dropped into the corridor, staring. "What?" Kaya breathed, her eyes wide. "Was that basic logistics?" Adrian said, already pulling the guards into the shadows and retrieving their keycards. "They'll wake up in an hour. This way." Athera watched him. The speed, the precision. It was not just training. It was something else. It was as fast as a thought. They moved through sterile white corridors, bypassing patrols. Adrian, seeming to sense them long before they arrived. He moved with the grim certainty of a man who owned the terrain, his borrowed boots making no sound. "The central server room is just past the main production floor," Kaya whispered, checking a stolen data pad. "Thane's private data vault. The recording must be there." Adrian held up a hand. "Wait." He listened, his head tilted. Machinery, a production line. Ahead. He opened a door with a bare crack. A new light spilled out, a sickly, pulsing, violet blue, and with it, a sound. A low, choral humming. It was a sound of profound, manufactured grief. They slipped inside, onto a high catwalk overlooking a vast cavern. Aethera's hand flew to her mouth. Below them was not a weapons line. It was a nightmare. Thousands of jagged, clear crystals, each the size of a human hand, moved slowly on a conveyor. At stations along the line, robotic arms were not assembling them, but injecting them. With thin silver needles, they pumped a glowing, ethereal substance into the heart of each crystal. "What is that?" Aethera whispered, horrified. "The registry calls them shard hearts," Kaya murmured, her face pale as she scanned the room. "Psychological ordnance. The Pact's signature weapon." Adrian's face was carved from stone. He was looking at a loading bay, where holographic data streams were being fed into the injection machines. "They're not just weapons. They're containers." Aethera focused on the data streams. They were not code. They were images. A child's face, laughing. A burning ship. An old woman's hand, reaching out. "They're memories," she breathed. A cold, sickening understanding dawning. "They're weaponizing memories. They seed them into terror cells," Adrian said, his voice a low growl of disgust. "Fire one of these into a crowd. It doesn't just explode, it broadcasts. He injects shrapnel with the psychic residue. The terror of the original victim's death, amplified 1,000 times. One shot can break the morale of an entire city, make them feel the death of 1,000 others." This was the Pact's source of power, not just military might, but fear itself, refined, packaged, and sold to the highest bidder. "The server room is across the floor," Kaya said, her voice shaking. "We have to move." They descended a metal staircase, keeping to the shadows, the choral humming of the machines washing over them. As they reached the floor, a figure stepped out from behind a massive, humming condenser. "I knew it," a digitized voice rasped. "I knew you were a ghost." It was Dax Harker. He looked worse than he had in the market. His cybernetic eye was whirring frantically, and he held a crude, heavy plasma pistol in his trembling metal claw. "You shouldn't have come, Cole," Dax stammered. "They told me you'd be here. They set a trap." Adrian stopped. The world seemed to narrow around him and the traitor, the factory, the mission. Aethera, it all faded. There was only the sound of his platoon burning. There was only the man who had sold them. "Dax," Adrian said, his voice soft. "I didn't have a choice," Dax yelped, a bead of sweat rolling down his one human cheek. "The Pact, they own me. They own everything. They said if I intercepted you, they'd clear my debt. They'd let me go." "He's lying," Kaya hissed. "He's stalling." Aethera saw the change in Adrian. His hands, which had been so fluid and fast, were now clenched into white-knuckled fists. This was the vengeance he had crossed the galaxy for. The mission was forgotten. "You sold 142 lives for credits," Adrian said, taking a step toward him. "Stop, or I'll—" Dax raised his pistol, his hand shaking so badly he could barely aim. This was it. Adrian could kill him. End it. Avenge his people. "Adrian," Aethera said, her voice sharp and clear. Not a plea. A command. "The mission, the Starloom, Thane. This is bigger than Helion." Adrian froze. His entire body was a war with itself. The rage, the grief, the all-consuming need for justice was fighting with the cold, hard logic of the choice she had laid before him. He looked at the sniveling, terrified broker. And he looked at his Empress, who was trusting him to be more than his own past. He made the choice. His discipline, forged in loss, was stronger than his hate. "He's right," Adrian said, the words tasting like acid. "He's a trap, but not for us." Before Dax could react, Adrian grabbed a heavy metal toolkit from a nearby bench and hurled it. It was not aimed at Dax. It was aimed at the shard heart line just behind him. The heavy box struck a critical injection node. A shower of blue sparks erupted. The line shuddered to a halt. The choral humming became a screeching, high-pitched alarm. "That," Adrian said, "is for Hellion. Now we go." He grabbed Athira's arm and pulled her toward the server room. Dax, forgotten, screamed in terror as alarms blared and armored footsteps began to thunder from the far side of the floor. "He triggered the main alarm," Kaya yelled as they ran. "He created a distraction," Adrian corrected. "Move." They reached the server room, a smaller, colder chamber filled with humming black crystal towers. Adrian sealed the door. The plasma bolts from the guards on the factory floor already beginning to sizzle against it. "That won't hold them long," he said. "It doesn't need to," Kaya said, her fingers already flying across the central console. "I'm in, Oh gods, he's arrogant. He kept it all in his personal vault. Thane the Pack, the whole thing." "Get it," Athira commanded, watching the door. It was beginning to glow red. "Athira, this is everything," Kaya breathed. "The real bomb orders, the transfer of the Third Fleet, and here it is." A holographic image flickered to life in the center of the room. Maldrick Thane, sitting not in his grand office, but in a small, dark room. Across from him, a creature of pure shadow, the presumed leader of the Pact of Glass. "And the throne will be legally yours. Regent," the shadow creature hissed. "The edict of sacrilege will be impossible to prove." Thane's voice was cold and clear. "And the star loom. It's human protocols. You will have them the moment the Empress is declared unworthy. The loom is yours to control. The Ashen Warden protocols will be yours to command. You will be able to stabilize or destabilize any star in the galaxy. A new age of commerce. Lord Regent." "A new age of order," Thane corrected. The recording ended. "I have it," Kaya said, yanking a data crystal from the console. "I have it all." The door behind them exploded inward, vaporized by a concentrated blast. 3 packed guards stood in the smoking frame, their rifles leveled. "Drop the data! Spy!" one of them barked. They fired, not plasma bolts. They were firing shard hearts, the air filled with jagged, glowing crystals, screaming toward them. "Athira! Down!" Adrian roared. He moved, just as he had on the balcony. He exploded into motion, placing his body between her and the attack. But this time, it was different. He didn't just block her. He threw his left arm out, and the air shattered. A wave of translucent, golden energy erupted from his body. It formed a disk, a shield of pure, shimmering light. The shard heart rounds struck it and disintegrated, their stolen memories screams, laughter, pain flashing harmlessly against the barrier. Athira stared, her heart pounding. The shield was pulsing. It was pulsing with a soft, golden light, in perfect, precise time with her own heartbeat. Thump, thump, thrum, thrum. Adrian grunted, the force of the impacts driving him back a step. His face was a mask of concentration. What is that?" Kaya stammered, huddled on the floor. "The Aegis Archive," said Adrian, his voice tense. "A contingency. From old Earth. Get Kaya. Get her out." He was not just a soldier. He was a custodian. A living archive of a forgotten human technology. a power that had lain dormant, waiting for him to stand beside a leader who was worthy, a point of civilization, who was alone and under attack. Her isolation, her defiance on the balcony, her choice to fight it had activated him. He slammed his shield forward, a wave of force that sent the guards stumbling back. "Go now through the back vent!" Kaya scrambled for a vent grate, her hands shaking. As she reached it, a fourth guard, hidden, fired from the side. The Shardheart round was not aimed at Aethera. It was aimed at Kaya. "Kaya!" Aethera screamed. The crystal shard struck Kaya in the shoulder, passing clean through the thin infiltration suit. It was not a fatal hit, but it was a Shardheart. Kaya screamed. There was no sound of pain. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated terror. She collapsed, her body convulsing, her eyes wide, staring at something that was not there. No, not the fire, not again. The weapon was forcing her to relive her worst memory, her parents' death in a refinery fire, amplified 1,000 times. "She's locked!" Adrian yelled, his shield cracking under the combined fire. "We have to go." A comlink in Aethera's ear, linked to Kaya's palace network, suddenly crackled to life. Breach, Regent Thane's shuttle is lifting from the roof. He's running. Aethera froze. The data crystal was in Kaya's spasming hand. Thane, the traitor, was escaping, right now. Kaya was down, trapped in a living nightmare. She had the proof, but she could catch the man. "Your Radiance, go!" Adrian roared. His shield was failing. "Get Thane. It's the only way." She looked at the exit to the roof. She looked at Kaya, weeping on the floor. She looked at Adrian, his blood streaming from his nose from the strain, protecting her. Thane, her empire, her revenge. Kaya, her friend, her only loyal subject. She remembered the 1,000 empty chairs in the Hall of Dawn. She remembered the feeling of absolute, crushing loneliness. She made her choice. "No," Aethera said, her voice ringing with the clarity of a crystal bell. She ran, not to the exit, but to Kaya. She ripped the data crystal from Kaya's hand and jammed it into her own suit. Then, she slapped Kaya hard across the face. The girl gasped, her eyes clearing for just a second. "Your Radiance. I am here." "Kaya," Aethera said. She hauled her friend to her feet, slinging Kaya's arm over her shoulder. "No one gets left behind. Not anymore." "Aethera!" "The door!" Adrian yelled. She ran, dragging Kaya, as Adrian dropped his failing shield and opened fire with a stolen pulse rifle. His shots precise, controlled, carving a path. They piled into the ventilation shaft, Adrian firing one last volley before sealing the grate behind them. They were safe. For a moment, in the dark, cramped metal tube, the only sound was Kaya's ragged, painful breathing and the distant, wailing alarms. Aethera tore a strip of fabric from her suit, pressing it against Kaya's bleeding shoulder. Kaya looked up, her face streaked with tears and grime. She tried to smile. "My apologies, Your Radiance." She groaned. "You really know how to crash a party." Adrian, reloading his rifle in the dark, his hands moving by, feel alone, did not look up. "Next time," he said, his voice rough, "I'll bring cake." The Grand Hall of Ancestral Law was a place of terrible, cold beauty. Unlike the ruined Hall of Dawn, this chamber was built from shadow and basalt, designed not for celebration, but for judgment. Light came from only two sources: the crimson, agonizing glow of the sunscar, pouring through a single, high oculus, and the cold, blue luminescence of the law stone at the center of the floor. Maldrick Thane stood before the stone, resplendent in the dark robes of the Regency. The small council, his puppets, were arrayed behind him. Across the room, alone, stood Empress Aethera Zeren. She was back in her coronation robes, the heavy imperial cobalt silks. The crystal dust had been brushed. The halo of shards sat squarely on her brow. She looked not like a victim, but like a judge, in a shielded alcove, hidden from view. Kaya Rel worked at a portable console, her arm in a crude sling, her face pale but set. The data crystal from the forge was locked into her terminal, patched into the hall's primary broadcast system. The deadline had arrived. The bells of the city were tolling, a slow, mournful sound. The throne-cutting ceremony had begun. "Let the record show," Thane's voice boomed, amplified by the hall's ancient acoustics, "that the Third Fleet has been secured, and the immediate threat of insolvency has been managed." He was spinning his treason as a victory. "Let the record show," he continued, turning to Aethera with a look of profound, false pity, "that Empress Aethera Zeren, last of her line, has been summoned to answer the charge of imperial unworthiness." He raised his hand, and the hall's energy flickered. A massive, holographic image, a projection from the city's security net, appeared in the air above them. It was the Hall of Dawn, empty. The 1,000 chairs, the uneaten feast, the ghostly orchestra. "The charge," Thane declared, his voice ringing with mock sorrow. "That on the day of her ascension, the galaxy itself rendered judgment. That not one, not a single delegate from 1,000 worlds, saw fit to attend. A vote of no confidence from the very stars themselves. We are an empire of one, presiding over ghosts. This," he gestured to the empty hall, "is the ultimate proof of incompetence. The line has failed. The throne is unworthy," council members murmured, shaking their heads in practiced agreement. "Aethera Zeren," Thane said, his voice hardening, "you are called to answer. What say you, to the Empress who no one came for?" Aethera was silent for a long moment. She looked at the image of the empty hall. She looked at the smug, assured face of her regent. "I say," she replied, her voice clear and carrying, "that you are correct, Lord Regent. No one came. The vultures, the opportunists, the fair weather friends, they all stayed away." Her gaze swept the council. "They smelled the decay, but they mistook the source. The rot was not on the throne. It was in the regency," Thane scoffed. "Words, the accusations of a desperate child. The proof is in the air." "Indeed it is," Aethera agreed. "The proof of my unworthiness is a hall of empty chairs. The proof of your treason is somewhat more substantial. Kaya, now." "What?" Thane said, confused. Kaya's fingers moved. The empty hall image faded. In its place, the holographic recording from the forge blasted into life, filling the chamber. Thane's face, cold and calculating, the shadow creature of the pact. "The throne-cutting ceremony is binding." Thane's voice echoed, trapping him. "The edict of sacrilege will be impossible to prove." The council members gasped. One of them, an old duke, stumbled back, his face ashen. "And the star loom," Thane's voice continued, a phantom accusing its source. "Is it human protocol? You will have them. The moment the Empress is declared unworthy, the loom is yours to control. You will be able to stabilize or destabilize any star in the galaxy. A new age of commerce. Lord Regent." "A new age of order." The recording clicked off. Silence, absolute and profound, filled the hall. Maldrick Thane was frozen, his mask of concern shattered, revealing the cold, reptilian fury beneath. He had not just been exposed, he had been convicted by his own voice, in the sacred hall of law. "So," Aethera said, taking one, Slow step forward. This is the peace you negotiated. This is the debt you reconciled. You did not sell our fleet to save us. You sold our son to enslave us. She raised her voice, letting the imperial command, so long dormant, ring from her. The charge of unworthiness is dismissed. I invoke the edict of sacrilege. By the ancient laws of the First Star, the challenger, Maldric Thane, having been proven in high treason, is found guilty. No, Thane roared. It was not a word. It was a primal scream of negation. He had lost. His intricate legal web had been burned in an instant. "You arrogant little fool!" he bellowed. "You think a video wins a war, you think your law matters now." His hand slammed into a hidden activator on the law stone. "The law," he snarled, "is only a tool. Now you see power." A high-frequency whine filled the air. The floor of the hall lit up, lines of crimson energy racing across the basalt. The light did not just come from the floor, it came from outside. Aethera turned, through the high oculus. The sun scar was pulsing with a new, violent intensity. "What have you done?" she breathed. The star loom. "You wanted it, I rigged it." Thane laughed, a high, manic sound. "I tied its primary energy conduit to this stone. I cannot control it, not like the humans could, but I can overload it. Right now, the core is cycling into a terminal cascade." The crimson light in the hall brightened, the air growing hot. "In 5 minutes, the Starloom's core will breach," Thane hissed, his face a mask of sweat and hatred. "It will vent its energy not into the scar, but into the city. A 1-megaton plasma burst. 10 million souls gone." He pointed a shaking finger at her. "Unless you sign, here, now." A small, velvet-lined box appeared on the law stone. Inside, a stylus and a data slate. The Imperial Act of Abdication. "Sign it," he screamed. "Sign your throne, your power, your life to me, and I will stop the cascade. Refuse and you will be the Empress of literal ash. Your honor against 10 million lives. Choose your radiance." This was his final move. Checkmate. He had turned the trial into a hostage crisis, with the entire capital as his victim. Aethera looked at the slate. She looked at the panicking council. She looked at the red light that was now bathing them all in the color of doom. She had won the law, and in doing so, she had lost the world. Deep beneath the palace, in a chamber of cold stone that predated the Zarin. Adrian Cole moved through the dark. He was not in the archives. He was somewhere else, a place Kaya's maps had only shown as void. He had left Aethera and Kaya at the entrance to the hall. "You have the proof," he'd said. "Win the trial." "And you?" Aethera had asked, her hand on the hilt of a ceremonial blade she now wore. "I'm in logistics," he'd replied, a grim echo of their first meeting. "I'm going to manage the supply chain." The Starloom. He was not looking for Thane's rigged console. He was looking for the source. He found it. It was not a Zarin terminal. It was a small, simple, human-made interface, hidden behind a panel of rockcrete. It was 300 years old, and it looked pristine. He placed his hand on it. The panel hissed, recognizing his biology. It opened. Inside was not a console. It was a cradle, form-fit to a human hand, and a small, crystalline node. He heard Thane's voice, broadcast from the hall above, echoing faintly through the stone. 5 minutes. The Starloom's core will breach." He was out of time. He plunged his hand into the cradle. It was cold. Needles, fine as air, slipped from the device into his palm. He did not flinch. He looked at the node. Connect blood memory, a faint, archaic text prompt glowed in English. Aegis Archive Activation Protocol Ashen Warden, he whispered, the words coming to him unbidden, a memory from a life that was not his. He was a custodian. He knew it now, the last in a line that had stretched back 3 centuries. His ancestors had built this place, had given the Zarin this gift, and had left a guardian, a logistics advisor, to watch over it. His power was not just a shield. The shield was a symptom. His purpose was the loom. But the loom was locked. The human protocols were sealed. It required authorization. He closed his eyes. He remembered the balcony, the girl in the crowd, standing alone, refusing to run. He remembered the forge. Her choice. No one gets left behind. She had not chosen the throne. She had not chosen revenge. She had chosen one, Kaya. That was the key. The Aegis Archive, deep in his genetics, recognized the signal. A worthy locus of civilization. An echo of the human spirit had been found. Authorization granted. He slammed his other hand, the one holding the data crystal from the forge, onto the crystalline node. Blood memory, he grunted. You want my memory. You want my blood, take it. He didn't just connect. He poured hate. He pushed his own life, his own pain, his own memories into the machine. He pushed the fire of Helion, the screams of his platoon, the cold rage that had driven him across the galaxy. He focused all of it, all his loss, all his humanity, into the ancient, waiting machine. He was the key. He was the power source. He was the human element the machine had been waiting for. In the hall, the air was screaming. The red light was blinding. Sign it, Thane bellowed. 1 minute left. Aethera picked up the stylus. She looked at it. She looked at Thane. And then she threw it. It clattered uselessly against the far wall. No, she said. What? Thane looked at her, his face a mask of disbelief. Would you let them all die for your pride? I would not, Aethera said, her voice shaking, but her eyes clear. I am betting on a friend. Thane's face contorted. You who, that human he is gone, you are alone. She is not, a voice echoed through the hall. It was Adrian, but it was not. His voice was coming from the Law Stone itself, amplified, metallic, and powerful. The system was his. Thane, Adrian's voice spoke from the stone. You wanted the star loom. You have it. A sound, deeper than thunder, shook the palace grounds. It was the sound of a star being held in a fist. High above, in the oculus, the red light vanished. It was replaced by a blinding, steady, golden beam. In the sublevels, Adrian screamed, his body arched in the cradle, his blood and neural energy being drawn into the loom. A human fuse for a divine machine. The star loom, awakened, bypassed Thane's pathetic sabotage. It drew the building overload not into the city, but into itself. It took the killing energy, combined it with Adrian's own, and fired it in a controlled, precise beam of golden light. It struck the sun scar. It did not close it. It did not fix it. It wove like a great cosmic spindle. The beam began to bend the erupting solar flares. It pulled strands of stellar plasma, cooled them into glittering dust, and began to weave a massive, shimmering, golden web across the scar. It was a patch, a shield of stardust. The terrible, dying red was replaced by a soft, hopeful, golden light. The thrumming in the hall stopped. The heat faded. The immediate threat was gone. Adrian Cole had, at an unimaginable personal cost, bought them time. Maldrick Thane stared at the golden sky, his mouth open, his mind broken. He had lost. He had lost the law. He had lost his leverage, and he had lost the sky itself. Athera Zaren looked up at the golden light, tears streaming down her face. "Sentinels," she whispered, her voice hoarse. From the shadows of the hall, 4 guards emerged, not packed. Hers, the old guard, the ones who had served her father, who had been waiting for a sign. "Arrest this man," she commanded, her voice regaining its strength. "Arrest him for high treason and sacrilege against the sun." Thane did not resist. He was a hollow man. As they bound his hands, he gave one last, rattling laugh. "Do you think you've won?" he spat. "You think that light saves you?" He looked up at the golden sky. "I was just the broker. The buyers are here. I told them if I fell Protocol Zero." A new sound. Not a bell. Not thunder. A vibration. A tearing in the fabric of space itself. Athera ran to the high balcony, the one that overlooked the city. The golden sky was now filled with shadows. Dozens. Then hundreds. Black, jagged, crystalline ships. The pact of glass fleet. They emerged from hyperspace, not in orbit, but in the high atmosphere. A blatant, crushing show of force. They surrounded Aurelian, their weapons ports glowing. The city was hostage again. Athera gripped the balustrade. She had won her throne, she had saved her city, and now she was about to lose it all. A hand, shaking, touched her arm. It was Kaya, her face grim. "He's alive." "Barely. We found him. In the core." A moment later, Adrian stumbled into the hall, supported by 2 of the loyal sentinels. He was pale as death. Blood was streaming from his nose and ears. His borrowed uniform was smoking, but he was standing. He met Athera's gaze across the hall. She saw the cost. The man who had sat beside her in silence, who had taught her the rhythm of rain, had nearly burned himself out to save her. She gave him a look. A promise. "I will not let you die for me." She turned to the stunned, silent hall. The council. The guards. Her people. "Maldrick Thane is a traitor," she announced, her voice ringing. "But his masters are here. The Pact of Glass is at our gates. The Starloom has bought us time. It has not bought us victory." She paused, taking a breath. "This is not a battle of law. This is a battle of survival, and the laws of Zaren are no longer enough." She turned, and she pointed. Not at her guards, not at her council. She pointed at the bleeding, exhausted human. "I, Athera Zaren, Empress of the Zaren Empire, do hereby transfer full, absolute, tactical command of the Aurelian Planetary Defense to Sergeant Adrian Cole of the Earth Delegation." A gasp went through the hall. It was madness. It was heresy. To give command of their world to an alien clerk. Adrian looked at the shocked faces. He looked at the hundreds of enemy ships blotting out the new, golden sky. He looked at Athera, who was watching him with an expression of pure, terrifying trust. He pushed himself off the sentinel, standing on his own. He was unsteady, but he was upright. He gave her a grim, exhausted, bloody smile. "Well," he said, his voice a rough rasp that carried across the stunned silence. At least this time, people showed up. The hall was silent for one agonizing beat. Then, from the back, Kaya Rel, her arm in its sling, began to clap, slow, steady, and defiant. A loyal sentinel joined her, then another. Within seconds, the entire hall erupted, not in celebration, but in a defiant, thunderous, desperate roar. The war had begun. The roar in the Hall of Law was the sound of a civilization breaking its own chains. It was the sound of 1,000 years of stifling, cowardly protocol being shattered by a single, defiant, human remark. Athera Zarin looked at the man she had just placed in command of her world. Adrian Cole was pale, bleeding, and looked like he was being held up by sheer spite. The Pact of Glass fleet, hundreds of crystalline daggers, hung in the sky above them, a silent, overwhelming threat. The applause died, replaced by a terrible, expectant silence. "Sergeant," Athera said, her voice cutting through the tension. "You have command. What are your orders?" Adrian took one, shuddering breath. He was operating on fumes, the feedback from the Starloom having nearly boiled his neural pathways. But the tactical mind, the part of him that had survived Hellion, was online. "They're not firing," he said, his voice a raw rasp. He looked up at the Oculus, at the golden, shimmering web of the Starloom holding the Sunscar at bay. "They're waiting. That shield it's stable. I can feel it, but it's not a weapon. It's a patch. It won't hold if they fire on it." "They are blockading us," Athera stated. "Worse. They're confident," Adrian said. He turned to Kaya, who was clutching her data slate. "Kaya, I need a citywide network, now. I need every loyal sentinel, every civic guard, every private security channel that isn't packed." "I can do that," Kaya said, her fingers already flying across her console, her face tight with pain. "The old civil defense grid, it's offline, but I can bypass the Pact's jammers." "Do it," Adrian commanded. He looked at the loyal sentinels. "Get the Regent to the deepest cell you have. I want him on suicide watch. I want him alive. I am not done with him." He turned back to Athera. "Your Radiance. The people in the city. They're terrified. They see those ships. They need to see you." "The Grand Plaza," Athera said, understanding immediately. "Show them the data. Show them the traitor," Adrian said. "Then we need to get everyone we can underground. This city is about to become a battlefield, Kaya's network. We can use it to organize an evacuation of the non-essential sectors. The old resonance tunnels." "Do you want to evacuate my capital?" the old Duke stammered, the one who had first recoiled from Thane's treason. "I want to save the people in it," Adrian snapped. "The capital is just crystal. It can be rebuilt. The people cannot—" Kaya coordinated. "Your radiance gives them something to fight for." The Grand Plaza of Aurelian had not been used for a public address in 500 years. It was a vast, open space of white marble, now stained with the golden light of the repaired Starloom. Tens of thousands of citizens had gathered, drawn by fear. They looked up at the sky, at the crown of black ships, and despaired. Then, Athera emerged onto the high balcony of the Word. She was not alone. She was flanked by her 4 loyal sentinels, and they dragged Maldrick Thane, stripped of his regalia, his hands bound in energy cuffs. A low, stunned murmur went through the crowd. "People of Aurelian." Athera's voice, amplified by the ancient acoustics, rang across the marble. It did not tremble. "You have lived in fear of the Sunscar. You have been told your empire is dying. You have been told your Empress has failed you." She gestured to the sky. "You look up and you see an enemy fleet. You see the proof of our end." "You are wrong," she pointed. Not at the fleet, but at the golden, shimmering web that held the scar. "Look closer," she roared. "That is the Starloom, an ancient technology, silent for a millennium, awakened. It is not a sign of our end. It is a sign we have endured. The immediate threat is contained." Wave of disbelief, of fragile hope, went through the crowd. "But the fleet is real," she continued, her voice hardening. "They are the Pact of Glass. And they are here because their agent has failed." She shoved Maldrick Thane forward. The crowd gasped. "The Lord Regent, Maldrick Thane," she declared, her voice ringing with the cold fury of the law. "He did not just betray me. He betrayed you. He attempted to sell our city, our people, our son, to these monsters. He is the one who engineered the explosion in the Hall of Dawn. He is the one who planned to let Aurelian burn to cover his crimes." She activated the plaza's holographic projector. The audio, the terrible audio of Thane's pact with the shadow, boomed across the square. A new age of order. The crowd was silent. Then, a single voice yelled, "Traitor!" It was followed by a roar of pure, unified rage. "By the power of the Edict of Sacrilege," Aethera shouted over them. "I, Aethera Zarin, do hereby declare Maldrick Thane guilty. I declare the Pact of Glass an enemy of the Zarin Empire. Their assets, their properties, their every holding on this world are seized. Their debt is void. They are in our debt, for the lives they have taken, and they will pay." She sentenced him not to death. He will face a public trial, judged by the very people he sought to betray. We are not murderers. We are an empire of laws. She paused, letting the new, defiant energy sink in. The Pact of Glass is in our sky. They expect us to panic, to surrender. They think we are weak. They think we are alone. She looked at the sea of faces. They are wrong. The Starloom holds. We are evacuating the vulnerable to the deep shelters. But we will not run. We will not hide. And we are not alone. She turned and strode from the balcony, the roar of her people echoing behind her. A sound not of fear, but of war. In a cold, dark, holding cell, deep in the palace's security wing, Adrian Cole found Dax Harker. The broker was huddled in the corner, his cybernetic eye dark, his body trembling. He looked up as Adrian entered, his face a mask of primal terror. "Cole," he whimpered. "The sergeant, the ghost. You're here to kill me. To finish it." Adrian stood in the center of the cell, the shadows clinging to him. The rage of Helion, the fire he had carried for so long, was a cold, quiet thing inside him now. It was not gone. It was just controlled. "I should," Adrian said, his voice quiet. 142 people, good people, medics, engineers, people who came to help. You sold them for scrap." "They made me," Dax cried, crawling back against the wall. "The pact, I have no honor. I know I'm a coward, just make it quick. Please." Adrian watched him. He saw the pathetic, shaking creature, and he saw his platoon burning in his mind's eye. He could do it. One, clean, physical movement, the logistics of revenge. It would be easy. But he also saw Aethera, running back for Kaya. No one gets left behind. He saw her, standing on the balcony, choosing law over execution. He will face a public trial. His own motive, the one that had felt so pure and so vast, suddenly seemed small. It had an ending. What they were doing now was a beginning. He had come to Aurelian to end his past. He had not expected to find a future. "Get up, Dax," Adrian said. Dax blinked, confused. "What get up?" Adrian's voice was like iron. Dax scrambled to his feet, shaking. "I'm not going to kill you," Adrian said. The words felt strange in his mouth. "That's what they do. That's the pact. They silence loose ends. They burn their receipts." He stepped closer, into the dim light. "You're not a soldier, Dax. You're not a traitor. You're a piece of evidence. You're the living proof of what the pact did at Helion. You're the key to linking Thane to a genocide." Dax's terror was slowly being replaced by a profound, dawning confusion. "You're not going to die in this cell," Adrian said, his voice cold. "You're going to live. You are going to stand up at Maldrick Thane's public trial, and you are going to be my star witness. You are going to tell this entire planet, this entire galaxy, what you did, what the Pact of Glass paid you to do. You're going to tell them the names of my platoon. Every single one." He saw the horror in Dax's eyes. This was not mercy. This was justice. A quick death was an escape. Living with the public, eternal shame of his betrayal, that was a true sentence. "My revenge," Adrian said, "is not your death. It's your testimony. I'm not ending your life. Dax, I'm just ending your silence." He turned and walked out of the cell, leaving the broker to collapse, weeping, in a new kind of hell. The Helion fire in Adrian's own mind finally, after so many years, began to cool. The Empress's solar, once a place of quiet reflection, was now a war room. Athera, Adrian, and Kaya were hunched over a massive, holographic map of Aurelian. The packed fleet was a ring of red icons, unmoving, in the sky. Kaya, her arm in a high-tech sling, was coordinating 1,000 moving pieces. Her voice was sharp, confident. "Sector 4 is clear," she reported, tapping the console. "The tunnels are holding. We've moved 30,000 civilians to deep shelters in the last 2 hours. The grid is working." She was no longer a cryptographer. She was the new voice of the court, a bridge between the ancient throne and the modern, subterranean network of the people. She was living proof that loyalty, the kind that got you shot with a shard heart, was now the highest currency in the Empire. "Good," Adrian said. He hadn't slept. He looked hollowed out. The activation of the loom having left a permanent, faint, golden trace in his irises. "What's the fleet's posture?" "They're just sitting," Kaya said, frustrated. "They're scanning. A deep, penetrating resonance scan. They're looking for something, but what we have, Thane. We have the data." "They're looking for the instruction manual," Adrian murmured, his eyes on the map. Athera looked up from a separate console. She had been reading the initial, garbled reports from the human delegation, who had been in terrified lockdown since the Gala. "My delegation is useless," she said, rubbing her temples. "They're asking for diplomatic extraction. They have no idea that one of their own is currently running my planet." She looked at Adrian, a quiet, profound exhaustion in her eyes. "When this is over, I will propose a new alliance with your Earth. A formal one." "We're not much," Adrian said, not looking up from the map. "We're a backwater planet. We're survivors." "So are we," Athera said. She poured a cup of steaming, dark liquid Azeran tea, and pushed it across the table toward him. He took it, his hand shaking slightly. "My ancestors made alliances with fleets, with banks and with powers. They all failed. They all sat in their empty chairs." She held his gaze. "I will partner with survivors. I will find people who know how to sit with you when the hall is empty. That is a foundation that will last." Their hands were close on the table, near the map. A shared, silent understanding. This was not a romance. Not yet. It was something stronger. A partnership, forged in fire and isolation. Adrian sipped tea. It was bitter, but warm. He found himself, unconsciously, tapping his fingers on the table. A nervous rhythm. Swoosh, tap, tap. The Zarin rhythm, the silent dance. Athera saw it. A rare, small, tired smile touched her lips. "You should be careful, Sergeant," she said, her voice soft. "That rhythm, the silent dance of the human advisor, has been declared formal court protocol by the Duchess of Shards." Adrian paused. his hand halfway to the cup. He didn't smile, but the exhaustion in his eyes lessened for a second. "I just hope," he murmured, taking another sip. "They don't expect me to do it before breakfast." Kaya broke the quiet and domestic moment. "They've stopped scanning," she said, her voice sharp. "The fleet, they're moving. No, not moving. They're focusing. Their energy signatures are converging. In the palace." "They found something," Adrian said, instantly alert. "They're not firing," Kaya said, her eyes wide. "They're sending a signal into the palace. At the deepest level. At the foundations." "Thane's words," Athera breathed, standing up. "The Ashen Warden protocols. The human protocols for the Starloom. We have the data, but they're looking for the source. The original files." She looked at Adrian, a sudden cold realization dawning. "When you activated the loom, you didn't just use your blood memory. You woke it up. You sent up a flare. They didn't know where the human interface was. Now they do." "They're trying to hack it," Adrian said, his voice grim. "If they can take control of the loom, they can turn it off, or worse, they can finish what Thane started," Athera said. She strode to the wall of her solar, to a place that looked like solid marble. She pressed her hand against it. A panel hissed open, revealing not a console, but a single, ancient, handprint lock. In the archives we searched the Ashen Warden file. It was a copy, a redacted file, Athera said. "My father was paranoid. He believed the old ways were dangerous. He sealed the original archive, the Empyrean Vault, the true history of the Zarin and of the first humans who came." "They're looking for the key," Adrian said, "and they think it's in there." "They're right," Athera said. She looked at him, her eyes filled with a new, strange fire. "Thane's plan was to get the loom. The Pack's plan, it's to find the manual. And they think we have it." She turned to her loyal sentinels, who had been standing guard at her door. "Get the honor guard. Seal this room." She looked back at Adrian. "Sergeant, you are coming with me. The Pact has one last card to play. It is time we found ours. I believe my family history and yours history are the same story, and it's time we finally read the last chapter. The Empyrean Vault was no room. It was a single, perfect, unlit sphere of obsidian. It was a place of absolute zero. No light, no sound, no data, no time. When Athera placed her hand on the lock that Kaya's systems had revealed, it was not marble she touched, but a cold, glass-like surface that hummed with a power she had never felt. The air pressure in her solar changed, her ears popping. With a sound like a single, perfect bass note, a section of the wall dissolved, opening a passage into the dark. "I will go alone," Athera said. "No," Adrian replied. He stood beside her, the golden trace in his irises, the only light source. "The Pact is scanning for this place. If they find it, they need to find both of us." She nodded. They stepped inside. The vault was not a library. It was a tomb. In the center of the sphere, bathed in a soft, self-generated white light, was a single crystal spire. It looked exactly like the reflections in the main archive, but this one was darker, almost smoky. "The Stasis Chronicle," Athera whispered, stepping forward. "The original. The true history." She placed her hand on it. The spire hummed, and the dark walls of the sphere flickered to life. They were no longer walls, but a 360-degree holographic recording. An old woman's face, an Empress from 300 years ago, filled the space. She looked worn, tired, but her eyes were sharp. "And the pact with the humans is sealed," the ancient Empress said, her voice filling the void. The Starloom is our shield, a gift from a people who have seen their own sons die. But it is a living shield. The image shifted. It showed a human, broad-shouldered, in an archaic, dark uniform, an ashen warden. The loom requires a human heart to bind it, the Empress continued. A custodian, a line of them, left behind, hidden in plain sight, to serve as its anchor. The machine is Zarin, but the key is human. Athera looked at Adrian. He was watching the recording, his face a mask of profound, dawning recognition. The loom will sleep, the recording said, until the hour of greatest need, when the empire has rotted from within, when the throne is abandoned, and the line stands alone. Then, the custodian will be revealed. The image shifted, and Athera gasped. It was the Hall of Dawn. Her hall. But it was ancient. The protocol is not a treaty, the Empress said. It is a ritual. A human will come. He will find the monarch in her isolation. He will break our laws. He will be the only one to come to the party when no one else will. He will sit, silently, beside the throne. This act of silent dance is the key, the defiance of a single, worthy monarch, and the witness of a single, loyal custodian. This is the bond that awakens the Aegis, and the Aegis awakens the loom. The recording faded. The sphere was dark once more. Athera stood in the silence, her mind reeling. The Gala, the emptiness, his arrival, the prism box, the quiet joke about the music. It was not an insult. It was not a political shunning. It was an activation protocol. She turned slowly, in the dark, to face him. You knew, she whispered. It was not a question. The Gala, the empty chairs. It wasn't just Thane's plotting. It was you. Adrian did not flinch. His golden-lit eyes met hers. Thane was already moving to isolate you. The Pact was already convinced Zarin was weak, a corpse, ready to be stripped. They were already planning to abstain, to show their contempt. What did you do? Her voice was tight. I helped, he said, his voice low. I am, or I was a logistics advisor. I had access to the inter-system diplomatic channels. The invitations Thane sent out, I added modifications. Small, logistical errors, impossible to trace. He recited them from memory. A minor, but prohibitive, fuel surcharge query for the core worlds. A pending, viral quarantine alert for the Outer Rim delegation. A scheduling conflict with a fabricated trade summit for the minor houses. Just enough friction. Just enough polite reasons for them to decline. I made it easy for them to choose the safe option, which was to stay away. You engineered my humiliation, she breathed, the scale of it landing on her. I engineered a test, he corrected her, his voice hard. I needed to clear the hall. I needed to separate cowards and opportunists from the throne. I needed to see if anyone would stand by you. And, he paused, the admission costing him. And I needed the hall to be empty. For the protocol, the star loom required an empress who was truly, profoundly, alone. And it required a custodian to sit beside her. I could not be one of 1,000 guests, lost in the noise. I had to be the only one. I had to break your law to fulfill ours. He looked at her, his gaze unwavering. I needed to see who would stand with you when the music stopped, and I needed to be the only one sitting there when it did. The Ashen Wardens, she said, her mind connecting the last piece. The redacted file. Thane's propaganda called them butchers, the ones who glassed fields. The Pact glassed Helion, Adrian said, his voice cold. We were the ones who sifted through the ashes. That's the name. Ashen Wardens. We were never soldiers. We were gardeners. A network of custodians, left behind by Earth, generation after generation, hidden as clerks, logistics advisors, low-level diplomats. We were here to watch, to listen, and to catch civilizations that were worthy of saving, to protect the points of civilization from the packs of the galaxy. His mission, his entire life, snapped into focus for her. "Hillian," she whispered. "Your revenge." "Hillian was not my mission," he said. "It was my test. It taught me what loss felt. It taught me how to recognize the look in your eyes on that balcony. My mission was always you." Athera was silent for a long, long time. The man before her had manufactured her single greatest moment of pain and isolation to give her the key to her salvation. He had judged her, and in doing so, had given her the power to judge her enemies. She did not feel anger. She felt a profound, cold, terrifying awe. "You let me be lonely," she said, her voice quiet. "You let me sit in that empty hall so I could finally see who was left when everyone else had gone." Adrian Cole bowed his head, a gesture he had never offered. "And so I would have the right to sit beside her." A low thrum shook the vault, the packed fleet. They were focusing their scans. "They're looking for this," Athera said, touching the chronicle. "The command codes?" "They're not just scanning," Adrian said, his face hardening as he checked a small, wrist-mounted device. "They're broadcasting. Protocol 0. They're telling the galaxy that Zarin has fallen, that the throne is vacant, that Aurelian is theirs. They're just rerunning my play. But for real this time." Athera looked at him. "An empty hall is a powerful message." "It is," Adrian agreed. "Then let's send a new one," she said. She strode out of the vault, Adrian right behind her. They did not go to the war room. They went to the Grand Communications Array, the civilian hub that had broadcast her gala invitations. Kaya was there, her face grim. "They've locked us out of military channels. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, declaring Thane, the legitimate ruler, murdered by a crazed Empress. They're winning." "Athera." "Patch me through." "Kaya," Athera commanded, stepping up to the console. "Not to the core worlds. Not to the powers that left us to die." She met Kaya's gaze. "Patch me through to everyone else. The independent worlds, the minor colonies, the merchant guilds. The worlds the ones oppressed by the Pact." Kaya's eyes widened. "That's 10,000 open channels. It's chaos." "Do it," Athera said. She leaned toward the broadcast node, and her voice, clear and strong, went out into the void. "This is Empress Athera Zarin, of an empire you have been told is dead. You are listening to the lies of the Pact of Glass. They are in my sky. They are holding my city hostage." She paused. "They are here because they are afraid. We have arrested their agent, Maldrick Thane. We have retaken our home. And we have awakened the Starloom." She gestured to Adrian. He stepped into the sensor range. "You have been told you are alone," Athera continued, "that the pact is too strong, that no one will stand with you. They told me the same. They left me in a hall of empty chairs. But they were wrong. One man came, a human, a survivor of Hillian. He sat with me when the powerful fled." She looked at Adrian, then back at the unseen galaxy. "The pact blockades us, but they cannot block stars. To any ship, any captain, any survivor who is tired of living in the shadow of the pact Aurelian is open. The Empress who no one came for is inviting you to a new gala. We are fighting. We invite you to join the party." She cut the feed. The room was silent. Kaya stared at her console. Adrian watched the tactical display. For 1 minute, 2. Nothing. Kaya whispered. Athera, I think. The console lit up. Not one light. 1,000. Hyperspace signatures, Kaya breathed, her voice breaking. Dozens. No hundreds. They're small. Freighters, mining ships. Old decommissioned frigates. From the Rim. From the Helian colonies. Oh, gods, Athera. The packed fleet, confused, turned to face the new arrivals. The sky, once black and empty, was suddenly full. The independent, forgotten worlds, the rabble, were here. They were old, ugly ships. But there were thousands of them. This time, everyone came. The packed fleet was a military marvel, but it was a corporate one. It was built for profit, not war. A blockade against a helpless city was cheap. A full-scale war against a unified rabble, backed by a functioning star loom, was not, then, a new signal. Your radiance, Kaya said, her jaw dropping. The core worlds, the ones who didn't come, they've just issued a joint declaration. They are formally condemning the Pact's illegal blockade and attempted regime change. They're flipping. Adrian permitted himself a small, grim smile. The Custodian Network, the other Ashen Wardens, on other worlds, they were just waiting for the signal. They have been planting truth seeds for years. We just gave them a reason to harvest. The pact was finished. Their legal cover Thane was gone. Their military advantage was contested. Their economic support from the core worlds had just vanished. The war was no longer profitable. On the tactical display, the ring of red icons wavered. One by one, the black, crystalline ships turned. And, without firing a single shot, they slipped into hyperspace and were gone. The trial of Maldrick Thane was short, public, and brutal. Dax Harker, as promised, was the star witness. He stood before the entire, assembled city, his voice shaking, and testified to everything. He testified to Helion, and he recited, from a memory he had tried for years to bury, the names of the 142 men and women he had sold. It was not an execution. It was a cleansing. Weeks later, the city was rebuilding. The Hall of Dawn was still shattered, but the Grand Plaza was full. Every day, with delegates from the new Alliance of Survivors. In a small, quiet, solar, Athera and Adrian stood opposite each other. The sun scar was no longer a wound. The star loom, in a low-power mending mode, was gently knitting the plasma, healing the sky, leaving a soft, golden nebula where the scar had been. It is a Zarin tradition, Athera said. She was holding a small, simple, glowing crystal. A star vow. It is not an imperial bond. It is not a marriage of states. She looked at him, her eyes clear. It is a vow of sitting. A promise that we will never let the other sit in an empty room alone again. That is all. But that is everything. He put his hand over hers, his fingers closing over the warm crystal. I accept. The war room was chaotic, but it was a happy chaos. Kaya Rel, now officially the voice of the Empress, was directing traffic, her arm in a stylish, high-tech sling. Right, she announced, tapping a data slate. Now that the existential crisis, the trial, and the galactic restructuring are handled, the real work. I'm planning a new gala, a re-coronation. And this time, I am guaranteeing guests. We have confirmed RSVPs from 17 systems already. She looked at Adrian, who was sitting quietly at the edge of the room, sketching improvements for the city's power grid. And, Sergeant, Kaya grinned. Do not worry. You are the guest of honor. Front and center. We're even naming a drink after you. The Silent Advisor. It's very dry. Adrian looked up, a look of mild, logistical panic on his face. Kaya, he said, his voice pleading. Please, just don't put my name on the invitation. I prefer to sit quietly. That night, the sky was clear. The new golden nebula pulsed softly. Athera stood on the high balcony. Ditto. The air was cool. Adrian joined her. He was holding the small, prism-shaped box he had first brought, the one she had never opened. You forgot this, he said. She took it. She opened it. It was not a jewel. It was not a data crystal. It was a small, smooth, gray stone, an earth stone. It's from a river, he said quietly. A place where it rains. A lot. She smiled, closing her hand around the simple, heavy, real object. They stood for a moment, listening to the distant sounds of the city rebuilding. The orchestra in the ruined hall was practicing. It was the same symphony. Then, as if by shared instinct, they moved to the stone bench and sat. They said nothing. The music drifted over them. They sat side by side in comfortable, shared silence. They were no longer alone.